aircraft maintenance is a phenomenal job. It's a real profession that has endless opportunities and something that I think just about everybody should consider. Let me tell you how this man was awarded the Aviation Person of the Year for the entire state. For me, for Dominic, it's do or die. If you go into this man's classroom, you are almost certain to go to work.
If you have no experience whatsoever, there's nothing wrong with coming to school. That's what we're here for. We train you.
The sad truth is only 2.5% of all working aircraft technicians today are female. The more ratings you have, the more valuable you have, and your career will skyrocket because of it.
Don't you make more money too?
You make more money. That's exactly right. He said, well, I like that I'm already saving up for my trip to Italy. So here's this 19-year-old kid making 70 grand, which, by the way, is about $20,000 more than I made after a PhD as working as a professor. So all of my students made more than I made after my first job in 10 years of school. You're a guy who went to law school. I don't know if your law school included taking the bar and passing the bar as part of the program and also didn't let you go until you had employment.
Please.
But that's what we do.
How much does it cost on average to get your certification? Well, everybody, welcome to the My Career Shop podcast. Today, for all the guests, I have with me the recipient of the 2023, very recent, Person of the Year Award from the Virginia Department of Aviation, Dominic Cummings. And as of this week, we have the president of the Aviation Institute of Maintenance, Dr. Joel English.
Hey, how are you? Thank you, sir. Congratulations to you.
Thank you both. You guys both had something that you just won on. So obviously the award last year and you just got the promotion. So congratulations.
Thank you. Appreciate
and thank you for coming out of the podcast. Appreciate it.
Well, thanks for having us. We both really appreciate it.
So for the audience, we are here to talk about the career of an aviation technician.
Right.
And the goal of this podcast is to, I really want to hone in and focus on careers that are high in demand. And becoming an aviation technician is a career that's high on demand.
That's right.
So I have with me some really, really good company for the purpose of carving the entire path from beginning to end and about how to become an aviation technician and their life once they become one.
Right.
So thank you very much. And we'd love to just start off by whoever wants to go first. Tell us how you got from, who wants to go first?
The president of the company.
All right. So we'd love to know, how did you go from starting off and now being the president of an aviation school?
So wait. That sounds good, though, don't it?
That does sound good.
That does sound good, though. I'm proud of you, man.
Right. So Aviation Institute of Maintenance, we have 15 campuses around the country, all the way from Northern California to Central Florida and everywhere in between. We are the largest FAA certified aircraft technician school in the country. And there are a number of reasons for that, but basically just about 20% of all aircraft technician students in the country are attending the AIM campuses. So we kind of have a large footprint and really outreach to a lot of people and tell them about this great career. Your question was, how did I get involved with this? And you asked, am I an aviation technician myself? The answer is absolutely not. I'm an English major, of all things. I have 3 degrees in English. I was a professor of English and technical and expository writing at Old Dominion University for a number of years. And I had a problem. I developed over about the 4th or 5th year of being a professor, I developed a little bit of a moral issue internally, and that was this. I loved inspiring young people to be strong writers, and all of us know that our professional life is more likely to be strong if we write well and communicate well. But my problem was my students at the university were all leaving with a bachelor's degree and had no jobs that they were actually preparing for. After a couple of years, I started asking, but what are they actually preparing for? They're going to compete for no jobs. And it became common that I saw my graduates, my students, working in food service, in just a number of areas that had nothing to do with what they went to school with. And that was problematic for me. And so in 2003, I kind of looked at that and investigated what a career-based educational system look like and join Aviation Institute of Maintenance. Since then, I ran a campus and ran several campuses. Now I run all 15 campuses around the country, and have found this great passion in watching the folks who graduate go immediately to work in very high-paid positions. In fact, the students that graduate from AIM after a 2-year program make more money than I made after graduating 10 years of college and a PhD. In my dream job as a professor, they're making significantly more than I did when I got out of school. And so there's this draw and fascination that I have with technical programs that lead to an efficient pathway to a great paying career, and that's what we have at AIM.
Well, that was a great intro. Good
Yeah,
luck, Dominic.
Like, what in the dough? But what Joel did say about this whole AIM thing is that I know what he's talking about because I am an alumni. As you can tell right here by the badge, I did graduate from the school. And the one thing about this trade school, the reason why I picked it is because it's only focusing on aviation maintenance. And we have the tools, we have aircraft there, we have instructors there that has hundreds of years of experience just at our one campus at AIM Norfolk. So when you come towards any AIM, one of the best things about it is that you learn it from an aircraft mechanic like myself. You're not learning.
Before we go there, I'd love to know, how did Dominique go from wherever you were before to winning the award for aviation in Virginia?
Whoa, it's
a heavy
long
award.
pass. Yeah. I mean, for the whole state of Virginia, still honored to get that, obviously. It just happened last year. And Joe, by the way, and I don't know who's listening, but ATAC, they have an award that I really want. So make sure you don't add this out. You make sure you listen. There's this award that's for, and I am very honored, by the way, no doubt, to win the award for the whole state of Virginia for the Person of the Year. I can never tell you how grateful I am for that. But it's this other award that I want.
Apparently not enough, Dominique.
You're going to help me get it. All right? Y'all going to help me get it. I already told, he's actually on the board for it, too. He already know which way I'm going. I was nominated for the Instructor of the Year for the whole country, but I didn't win that award. So now I'm going to keep working to make sure I get that award this year. And when I get it, you're going to help out with that, trust me. This podcast going to go. And then you be talking to the man that won the award for the state of Virginia and the man that won an award for the whole country. So I'm going for that. But anyway, to answer your question, I'm a veteran of the Navy. So I wound up just being on a ship and I'm working with aircraft, but not working on them. And then I decided I actually did want to work on them. So I contacted AIM and I became obviously a graduate in 2007, got my AMP, and which we'll talk more about what an AMP is. But you're going to get that, while going to school if you don't have no experience whatsoever. I had no experience working on aircraft. So anybody who is listening to this, and Joel's going to emphasize this, if you have no experience whatsoever, there's nothing wrong with coming to school. That's what we're here for. We train you. I mean, I'm known for this. It's the simple fact of I didn't know the difference between a metric and a standard wrench when I first went to school here. Mind you, I'm a veteran of the Navy. I was there for 4 years, but I didn't really use tools. I didn't know anything about that until I went to school here. So anybody who is listening to this, who's watching this, just know that that's where we're here. Just still come in, we'll show you around, and you can still easily become an aircraft mechanic without knowing anything about aviation or airplanes for real. And like I said, I'm spoken proof of that. So when I did graduate, I did wind up moving all around the country a little bit because I'm single, no kids. So I'm just you being an aircraft mechanic, you can pretty much move any state you want to go to. I mean, that's just facts. Once you do get this AMP, and I realized that me being single, no kids, I took advantage of it. Yep. I mean, I moved from VA to North Carolina to Iowa, worked in Illinois to back to DC, where I'm from, and now I'm back in Virginia Beach area. So all because of the AMP. So that's how I became an aircraft mechanic, is just the school, the Aviation Institute of Maintenance in Norfolk. And that's why I came back to be an instructor. And
so now how'd you get to the award?
They had a lot to do with that. Shout out to Ashley Oden, by the way. She had a lot to do with that. That's I guess you should definitely talk a little bit more about
Yeah.
Ashley.
Actually, I'm gonna steal the question from him because he's gonna be all humble and all that. Let me tell you how this man was awarded the Aviation Person of the Year for the entire state. And by the way, this isn't a Teacher of the Year. This is the Aviation Person of the Year, meaning he went against not only teachers but also mechanics, pilots, rocket scientists at NASA, aviation engineers that are creating tomorrow's electric vehicles. Every type of aerospace in the pretty broad state of Virginia, with one of the biggest aerospace and space programs in the world, competed, and Dominic Cummings was chosen. So really the question is, how is that possible? Not a rocket scientist, but instead an aviation maintenance teacher is chosen, and it's about the passion that he brings to the classroom. Dominic, he's been an instructor with us for a number of years, but about 3 years ago, we appointed him to a special class of students that are sponsored by Piedmont Airlines. Piedmont Airlines is a subsidiary of American Airlines. You worked at American Airlines for a while.
I did.
He's such a special teacher and is so intent on student success that we put him in a classroom full of Piedmont Airlines folks. Now, every one of these students are being their tuition is paid by Piedmont Airlines. They have a job with Piedmont Airlines if they can get through this intensive program that we have. And so we put our best teacher in front of them. And in the first class of students, he had a 100% graduation rate of his students. 100% of those graduates got the FAA certification. You've heard him say A&P, the Airframe and Power Plant Certificate. 100% of them employed in field, working today, this very day, at a Piedmont Airlines location around the country. It is common for our students to have very high pass rates and rates. About 85% of our students graduate. About 85% of those, or close to 90% of those, are working in field afterwards. Those are great numbers, but the only greatest number than that is 100%. And so Dominic's effectiveness in the classroom has not only been great for the students, but it's been incredibly great for the entire field of aviation. Ultimately, if you go into this man's classroom, you are almost certain to go to work and have a great lifetime in aviation, and that is why the state of Virginia said, this is the guy we want to replicate. This is the guy that we put at the front of our aerospace industry to say, this is what it means to be a great Virginian in aviation.
Wow. Well, it was because of that I was able to find you guys. So I'll tell you how I found you guys. I was looking for high in demand careers. Aviation popped up. Through aviation, I'm looking for everyone in Virginia because I want local guests. And I started reading Yahoo articles. And through the Yahoo articles, I found out about you. And that's how I got in touch with AIM. So very, very fortunate and lucky to have you guys here, and excited to carve out the exact path. So hopefully some more students get 100% chance at succeeding and just, getting a job, earning money, and moving through their professional life, right?
Yep.
So thank you, firstly. And so the first and one of the most, this question takes the longest.
Mm-hmm.
I want to know, what are the prerequisites to becoming an aviation technician? So each step that is required, not recommended, not something, it literally, what is just the prerequisites that John or Billy wants to actually apply for to become an aviation technician? What are those steps, and what do I need to do?
You bet. We'll talk about John and Billy. We'll also talk about Beverly and Rachel, because you're absolutely right in stopping and saying, well, this is a guy-dominated field, right?
I wasn't thinking that.
No, I know.
I wasn't
know.
thinking
Yeah,
that.
but
A lot of
Don't get
people
me canceled, Joe.
trust me. A lot of people think that, though. Don't even worry about it.
And I'm sorry if I'm a little sensitive to that, but here's the sad truth. The sad truth is, you're right. Only 2.5% of all working aircraft technicians today are female. And yet, every airline will tell you females make the greatest technicians because they have a greater attention to detail. Sorry, fellas, it's true. They follow instructions without deviation. And in a lot of cases, they fit in smaller spaces, which aircraft generally are. And so there are these attributes of that are naturally assigned to that come out of the female technician that are phenomenal. So we work hard at AIM across the campus or across the country. 11% of our students are female, and I won't be satisfied till it's half and half, right? But that said, the pathway is the same. There are two ways to become a FAA certified aircraft technician. Either go to an A&P school, airframe and power plant school, like AIM is, or two, if you happen to have 30 months, about just short of 3 years of experience as an aircraft technician, you can sit for the FAA exam. Now you would say, well, how are you going to get experience as an aircraft technician without going to school or having it? And really, it's about being a military veteran. So Dominic talked about his veteran experience in the Navy, and he didn't work on aircraft, but a lot of Navy and Air Force veterans do have some in-field experience. So if you happen to be a military veteran who worked on airframes and power plants while you were in the Navy, then or any armed service, or have that experience, you can come to AIM, and we actually have a shorter program that can prepare you to take advantage of that eligibility. But it's only a very small percentage of people who do that way. Most people who want to be an aircraft technician, it's about going to an A&P school. Now, there are 190 aviation maintenance schools in the country. That's great news. So almost every state has an A&P school. We have 15 of them around the country, so AIM is kind of everywhere. If you're in Texas or Nevada or California, Indiana, I can go down the list.
Can you actually go down the list?
Oh, I can, absolutely.
Yeah, so let's start on the West Coast.
Great.
That's a good point.
There's so seldom who can do this off the cuff, but I can do it. So, so the 15 AIM campuses: Atlanta, Georgia; Orlando, Florida; Charlotte, North Carolina; Norfolk, Virginia; Manassas, Virginia, only 15 miles from where we are right now; Philadelphia, Pennsylvania; Newark, New Jersey. We are in Indianapolis, Kansas City, Houston, Dallas. We're in Las Vegas and Fremont, California. Did I miss one? I think I may have missed one. Chicago. I missed Chicago.
You're becoming the president.
Yeah, that's right.
So make some noise for that one, though. Yeah. I couldn't do that.
And this is exciting. Our newest and final campus just opened up in January 2024. We're doing our grand opening there next week in Phoenix, Arizona. So all of the campuses are beautiful and wonderful and full of passionate aviation mechanics as instructors like Dominic. And all of them are a 2-year program and it's actually 22 months, just short of 2 years. We will enroll the students, and if they've had no experience, automotive experience is not a requirement, just a passion and interest in learning to be an aircraft mechanic. And this man and all of his 300 other colleagues that are aircraft maintenance instructors will take that young person, or not so young, and teach them from the basics of tools, the basics of the math, physics, and electricity that is involved, all through tearing down aircraft engines, repairing every aspect of the fuselage and body and pneumatics of an aircraft, and lead them to becoming a certified technician. 22 months, you're ready to go to work at one of the large airlines.
Okay, I have lots of questions.
Great.
So the first part you said was 30 months of experiential training, and then you'll go through a program. How does the clock start on the 30 months? Is it just like somebody knows somebody and they give you a reference that, hey, we started working on these crafts at this particular time, and thereby there's this long of a period that this person's been practicing for?
Yeah. So the most common way it happens is in the military, there is a thing called an MOS. That is basically a transcript of what you did while you were in service. And so if you went into the Navy and were on the crew of a helicopter squadron, and you were turning wrenches on the engines and the the fuselage and body of a helicopter, then you would come with a transcript, and that transcript would say, Joel worked for from 2000 through 2024 as an aircraft mechanic, and that 24 years on that transcript, I could actually take to the FAA's local office, and they would say, okay, looks like you worked on aircraft. Now you qualify to sit for the A&P exam.
Okay.
But of course, your question is, can you pass these exams?
Exactly.
and so it's very common for military folks to, even if they qualify to sit for the civilian FAA exam, they need at least a short course that helps them prepare. And often they say, why don't I just spend the next 22 months here learning it from scratch so that I can really be a civilian aircraft technician? So just because you qualify with 30 months or more on airframes and power plants doesn't necessarily mean you're ready to pass the exam, and it certainly doesn't mean that you feel confident to become a civilian aircraft technician. And we have a pathway for both. We love it when a service person says, school me up, I think I'm going to take those exams, and it's successful for many.
And how long is that? The shorter program?
About 10 weeks.
10 weeks.
Just a couple. If you are confident and competent, that within just about a couple months, we can train you to pass the exams. If you're less than confident and instead you say, I think I want the whole program, we have many that say, I'm just coming to school, man. And that's great. But what's important to say is you don't have to have any experience to actually enroll in the school. If you're serious and ready to take your career into this incredibly lucrative and opportunity, full area, then all you have to have is an interest, and we'll teach you everything.
Okay, so the 10-week, I'm guessing it's theory, or is it theory and practice? And what about the FAA exam? What is that? Is there a practical component to it?
Yeah.
What is that?
So it's 3 components. I'm going to shut up and let you talk some. Actually, let me describe what it is, and then you tell us how it is preparing for it. So it's actually 3 written exams and 1 2-day oral and practical exam. It's intense.
So the 3 written exams, are those all on the same day?
Usually not. I think I've heard of somebody doing them all, but they're roughly 2 hours long a piece, and so that would be a long day to do 6 hours of examination. Usually you break it up into different days. Okay. And I'm telling you, the first exam is called General Aviation, where you need to know math, physics, and the theory of flight and aviation. The second one is called Airframe, the A of A&P. That airframe exam covers everything about the structures and electrical systems and avionics, everything you'll need to know on the actual aircraft body itself. And then the power plant exam is everything about the engines and propulsion systems. And I'm talking about helicopters and jets and propellers and everything that, powers an aircraft. So these 3 different written exams, each of them 3, I feels like I don't mean to talk anybody out of this, but it's an intense process. It takes a lot of preparation time.
So these are all theory-based exams, and are they long answers? Are they multiple choice?
I'll take that one. All right, so yes, the 3 written exams, they are computer-based, 3 multiple choice answers for each question. So the good thing about that is that we train you on that, though. That's the whole purpose of coming to school. But then once you do pass each written exam, even though they are called written exams, you're not writing anything. It's all 3 multiple choice answers to each question, A, B, and C. And yes, they are intense. But then once you pass all 3 of those, you then take your oral exam. Now, you see how you and I are talking right now? Okay, with the written exams, you cannot use your books or your notes. You go in there, you take all 3 tests. Don't worry about it. We prepare you for that. We also prepare you to take what's called the oral exam. So imagine me asking you questions without your books or your notes that you have to answer them. That's your oral exam, just like we're doing right now. And then the practical exam is once you do pass all 3 written, you pass your oral, then you got to prove to your DME that you can actually do the mechanical work. That's the practical exam. So yeah, everything's pretty intense, but we make it so easy for you.
I would hope so.
That's why we have such a high
I'm flying,
rate.
And
yeah.
It's all FAA
aircraft
approved.
better be good.
Yeah.
There is zero tolerance for accidents and mistakes in this field, right?
Yeah, I mean,
It's
it's like
gotta be
imminent death. If,
Yeah,
if
pretty much.
there's a mistake. So
I mean, the role of a doctor, physician, surgeon is incredibly important. But if they have a bad day, there's one person on the line, and when he has a bad day, there's 350, and that's just
Facts.
And
something else too that we do preach is that it's not just life and death. It's also aircraft gate times. You do realize that when it comes to us aircraft mechanics, we got to make sure that gate's over there on time. I mean, that the aircraft's over there at the gate on time. So what happens if we kind of mess up and now the aircraft's late to the gate and now you missed maybe your connection flight? Maybe you missed that meeting that you was going to. So it's not just life and death, which is obviously the most important thing is safety, hands down, period. But we do try to make sure that we're on the same page and that we get everything done because you're paying us to make sure that you can get to that connection flight from this airport and then get home. Your family's there waiting for you. Your business colleague. That's something else we got to think about too. So we always stay focused on that.
Okay.
So it ain't just life or death, bro.
So-
it's also schedule. And we got your back with that, obviously.
appreciate it. Well, I'm not becoming an aviation technician, but to Bill, John, Rachel, and Beverly.
that's right.
Right? Those are our hypotheticals today. So the first route was the 30-month experiential thing. Then you take a 10-week course, and then you write 3 written exams and the oral exam and the practical.
Right.
And are there metrics on what's a pass?
That absolutely. So each exam requires a 70% or higher to pass.
Okay. How do you grade the oral and how do you grade the
It's
practical?
all computer based.
The oral?
Now, the oral exam is not computer based. Actually, kind of it is in a way. So the DME, he would enter
That's
everything.
a designated maintenance examiner.
Yes.
The person giving you the exam, it's actually a 2-day oral and practical exam. Could be 12 hours long in all, where the examiner and the student are one-on-one. It is the holy ground of aviation maintenance, where a young man or woman comes in and is ready to test that oral and practical, spend that one-on-one time, and when they make it through that, it is they're on to their career, but it's just a great time. And by the way, that DME, designated maintenance examiner, is not Dominic, the instructor.
I'm not qualified.
It's an independent FAA certified examiner. So Mr. Cummings and all his colleagues as faculty members teach the students, but that designated examiner, a new face for them that works directly for the FAA, is the one making sure that student is ready to go to work and go on the flight line.
So you said 12 hours.
Yeah.
I mean,
It can. Well, it can be.
You'll know everything about the guy's family.
Yeah.
You know what he does. Like, what are they talking about for half a day?
It's actually less talk and more work. When DC said that there's a computer element to it, the FAA, the examiner actually goes to the FAA website and it prints out a list of projects that person has to conduct over that 12-hour period. So if you and I were to watch that exam, oral and practical exam going on, there'd be some time where the examiner, DME, is sitting back and watching, and that student is repairing a hole placed in a fuselage, or working on a welding project, or creating whatever the computer told them this person's going to have to perform. They're going to have to perform, just like when they spend their first day on the job, and you never know what airplane repair is going to be needed. That's what it's simulating.
So it's an oral and practical
That's right.
exam,
Yes.
2 days.
That's right.
Okay, I thought one day was oral, one day was practical. I was like, how are you talking for this long?
Yeah.
So, okay.
Good point. Now, with the oral and practical exam, he's right. It can last up to 12 hours, but we've seen people pass in 5-6 hours, both of them. So
Because
it depends
they're
on
that
how
good,
they're
they
just
can-
that good.
Yeah.
So you can't really get away with the 30-month. You have to be competent, right? I mean,
Very
otherwise you're just signing
confident.
up to fail. Like, how much does the FAA exam cost to write?
Interesting. The entire process costs about $1,800.
Okay.
Each written exam is about $160, so you're in about $450. And to take the oral and practical, it's just about $800-900. Now, at AIM, we do something pretty important. We know that there's this $1,800, almost $2,000 bill that comes at the end. We cover that for the student. When you become an AIM student, you're not going to have to come up with the extra cash at the end to do that, because we put so much work into the certification process. We're not going to let finances be a problem. And so in our history before, there had been times where a student would say this: well, I don't have the $1,800, so I think I'm going to go work and get a job for a while, and then when I have the money, I'll come back and test. And the problem with that is, one, if you make money, you get drawn to that, and if you spend time out of school, then it takes a refresher. And so what we do is say, nah, we're not going to let money stand in the way. We just cover that as part of the cost of coming to AIM, and so you're testing during the program and not having to worry about that cost.
And does that apply to both the 10-week program and the full?
It does not. So if the student comes for the short 10-week program, then part of the cost they're going to have to build into their personal budget is paying for the exams.
But if they come for the full program,
that's right.
covered.
It's part of it.
Okay, so now let's talk the more traditional route, right? You said it was 22 months,
right?
Correct?
Yep.
And prior to this, we had discussed that you can start at any time. So I'd love to know a little bit about that, because most careers are very limited in the sense that you can only start in September.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
So, I mean, if September, or it's the fall, or,
that's right.
What are the semesters?
Yep.
And so can you discuss that a little bit?
Yeah.
And then from the day of enrollment, 22 months.
That's right. Yeah. So most community colleges and universities are on a semester system, and most of them start students in August or September and follow that schedule. I said earlier, there are 190 aviation maintenance schools, and the majority of those, about 130 of those 190, are community colleges and universities. Great colleges and universities, and I love them, and they do a great job too. But one of the things they don't do is sort of bend and adjust to a student's schedule. So if you go to Southern Utah University that's got a great program, or if you go to a community college in your area that has an A&P program, you're probably starting in August. And at AIM, we start students every 5 weeks. We have a new start of students in January and February and March and May and June, et cetera. And we do that because we know that the student has an interest, and that interest is now, and a need. And so we start on their schedule. Same way with class. So we have a class for the daytime and a class for the nighttime. So if you're a student who has a daytime job, you can be a night student. If you have a nighttime job or a weekend job, you can be a day student. And you'll always know for the entire 22 months exactly what your schedule is. When I went to university, sometimes I had classes in the morning, sometimes in the afternoon, sometimes classes didn't make and I had to cancel that class. We don't do that. You're a full-time student on one schedule. You can really create your working and family schedule around that. And whenever you're ready to start, we're ready to start you. And 22 months later, you're a certified technician.
And is the 22 months just the school part, or does that include the exam as well?
Yeah, includes the exam. It's another unique thing about AIM. We have a program called a course called Capstone. The final course in the program is a Capstone course, 5 weeks dedicated to finishing any of the exams you haven't taken, taking that oral and practical. So yes, it's a lot of education for the first 16 classes. That 17th class is for stopping, studying, testing, being certified. And it's actually common for our students to get certified even before that Capstone course.
Yeah, but with the Capstone program, I could tell you that really came in handy because when I went to school here, when I graduated, there was no Capstone program. So the thing is, I graduated back in 2007. So long story short is that once you go to school, you start day one, and then you actually graduate. You graduate, you get your graduate certificate. And then back then, it was up to you to study for the written exams, and then the oral exams, and then the practical. So you had to try to find instructors on your own. And then we came up with the Capstone program, which is only dedicated to you preparing for those written exams. Remember earlier I just told you that we make it easier for you. So when they came up with the Capstone program, that really changed everything. And we should talk about this too. Speaking of graduates, I think at AIM Norfolk alone, we had last year, was it 80 what now?
So just an example of the certification rate and the success of our students. The AIM campus in Norfolk, Virginia, where Dominic teaches, had 86 graduates. They're about 200 students, so about more or less half of the students graduate each year because it's a 2-year program. 86 graduates, and of those 86 graduates, 80 of them left with their certification by graduation date, which means something in the tune of 94% were certified, and practically everybody who's certified leaves with a job. We can talk about some of our employers if you'd like to. I think that'd be a great idea, but
we're gonna get there.
Yeah.
We definitely will, because the whole purpose of the first part is just let's carve out a path, right? And then obviously towards the end of that, let's land a job. Right. And so, okay, I'm just trying to, whenever I'm on the episode, I always try to regurgitate the information in my head to see if I didn't understand something. It's very likely my guest didn't either. So I just want to make sure that I covered the entire route. So we got the 30-month experiential part. They said there's an 18-month experiential program online. Is that something that other schools offer?
I'm not sure what you're referring to with the 18-month program.
So they said that there's 3 routes, right? It says graduation can be substituted for 18 months of practical work experience with airframes or power plants, or 30 months practical experience with both systems simultaneously.
Yeah.
So, and then the third route is technical school, which would be AIM.
Yep.
Okay.
Right? So 30 months we already discussed.
Yep.
Right? Technical school would be you do 22 months at AIM.
That's right.
And we will discuss actually what happens in those 22 months as well. But I'm guessing that you finish the 22 months and then the FAA exam is what you write. And we discussed what the FAA exam was. So what is this 18 months of practical work experience with airframes or power plants?
Yep. Actually, I think what you're referring to is this. There is a thing called a single rating.
Oh, good call.
We've talked about airframe and power plant, the 2 aspects of the aircraft, and so Dominic wants to make you an airframe and power plant technician. If you've had 18 months on airframe only with no engine work, no power plant, then you can become an airframe mechanic, get the airframe certification without the power plant rating. Same is true if you've worked on aircraft engines for 18 months. Then you can challenge the power plant portion, but you won't have the airframe. So anybody who has 18 months experience on airframe or 18 months of experience on power plants can challenge that rating, the airframe or the power plant. But in order to become both an airframe and power plant technician, your experience would have to be 30 months with both.
So because you guys are in the industry, do people do this, and why would you do this?
Yes.
Like, why would you cut your limbs? Right?
We
Like,
don't recommend that.
is that a mastering thing? You know, because a
Yes.
lot of people just like to master something, so they just go to airframes or power plants.
I could tell you, so I'm avionics. That's my strength. And I know a couple of avionics guys who only have their airframe license. That's the only thing you need.
What's avionics? Which is both airframe and power plant?
No, good question. Avionics, okay. Imagine you're in a flight deck, what people refer to as a cockpit. You're a pilot. You're looking at all the instruments up there. You see the circuit breakers all around, the switches. That's me. That's normally what I work on. How do you communicate, navigate? I mean, I work on everything. Don't get it twisted. But avionics that's something I just fell in love with. When it comes, and we'll talk more about this later, you can actually work on what you're strong on. Are you strong on engines? We still want you to be an airframe and power plant. We want you to get both, but you can still only work on engines. So that's what you're strong on. With me, I'm electrical, I'm avionics. But I know people who actually work at NASA who only have the airframe certification. They don't have that power plant, and it works out just fine for them. So it depends on what you, like, you can just come and just get single rated. However, we always recommend that you get both. We can make it happen for you if that's what you want, but just get both.
So with the single rated, they write the same FAA exam?
Right. So you remember the three written exams:
Yeah.
general, airframe,
Really?
and power plant.
Yeah.
If you had 18 months or more work on airframes in the military, then you would qualify to sit for the general and airframe to become an airframe technician, airframe certified. And if you didn't work on engines at all, then you can't get your power plant unless you come to school for that rating.
Okay, so but they would do those two exams and then the oral and
practical.
the practical with respect just to airframes, and then the
Precisely.
power plants
Look
that
at this
people
guy.
would do just with
That's exactly right.
You caught on real quick.
Trying.
And,
Okay,
like-
so
like
that
Dom-
makes sense.
Yeah, like Dominic said, we would say to that individual, you can become employed, but you will be limited to what you can do and frankly to who will hire you. With just an airframe or just a power plant, you have about half of the usefulness as a fully certified A and P, right? And
Most airlines won't hire you if you only got a single rating.
Right.
Most airlines won't hire you as a
Who
mechanic.
will hire you?
So obviously NASA. There's a whole bunch of repair stations. It depends on what you want to do. There are repair stations that will hire you if you
What's
just
a
have
repair station?
Good question. So imagine you own your own airplane. You got to fly somewhere. You got to get inspected. You can send it to a repair station. Long story short, I mean, very simple.
That's a very small amount of employers, I'm guessing.
you could call it the Jiffy Lube of aircraft, right? And that's probably not quite fair, but repair stations are always often called MRO, maintenance, repair, overhaul stations. And we have a lot of employers who are MROs, and so when United Airlines flies into Dulles, and that they noticed a problem with some of the avionics or a problem with a tire or whatever, that aircraft needs maintenance, they will pull it into a repair station, a maintenance, repair, overhaul station, and say, in order to get this thing flying back to Minneapolis tomorrow morning, we're going to need some work on the tire or the winglet or whatever overnight, and that repair station will do that job. And so since there are a range of kinds of things that might be needed to be done, a repair station could hire someone who just had an airframe rating. They won't be able to do anything with the engines, but they'll be useful for the airframe component. But of course, what we say to the technician is, let's get both. Because what you really want to do to propel your career is be able to say yes to an engine maintenance, yes to an airframe maintenance, yes to an avionics maintenance. The more ratings you have, the more valuable you have, and your career will skyrocket because of it.
Don't you make more money too?
You make more money. That's exactly right.
Yeah. Okay.
They pay you for each certification.
So when I'm talking about careers here. So when I say aviation technician, it seems somewhat like an umbrella. So what do you get? Like, take me through like Bob and Rachel, right? When they come to AIM, they come out with a degree, diploma, certification.
Yep.
What is it?
Depending on the AIM campus, we have a degree program at some of our campuses. Most of the campuses are certificate-based. So the two schools in Virginia, Manassas and Norfolk, have only certificate programs. But we have a degree program in Indianapolis and Atlanta and Fremont, California. We can get to why we've chosen those for a degree. But generally speaking, repair stations only look for the certificate. They want to make sure that you're FAA certified, and a degree program does not necessarily add to your credential, at least for the entry-level job.
So does the extra theory in the degree program open different opportunities?
It does. It opens management opportunities.
Okay.
And so, for example, the reason we have the degree program in Atlanta is because Delta Airlines has the huge Atlanta hub at Atlanta Hart, the airport there. And so Delta says, yes, we need technicians, but we also want to promote people to leadership positions, and we prefer a degree for that. So those students who want to get the degree can do that at the same time as they're getting the A and P there. Same thing, Republic Airlines in Indianapolis and United Airlines, the San Francisco base there says, we prefer a degree, so we leave that option for the student if they want to do a degree.
So when they do a degree program, is a portion of it the same exact education that you have to take to obtain your certificate?
That's
and
right.
then the latter portion, or however you juggle it, it goes to leadership.
That's right.
That's sprinkled throughout
exactly
the program.
Right. It is the exact.
But it's longer, I'm guessing.
Believe it or not, this is gonna be surprising. Believe it or not, it's the same length of time. The students just do their general education courses on Friday, and the A&P program Monday through Thursday. So if you're in a certificate program at AIM, you come to school Monday through Thursday, and if you're the degree program, you also come on Friday and do the distance educate or do the general education at that time. I said distance education, but because we also offer online courses for those general education courses, a writing course, a history course, a mathematics course, those courses that and a business course that add to their ability to speak, write, communicate, and manage folks if they go into industry.
There's got to be a reason why people just do the certificate then, right? Is there a cost difference?
Sure, there's definitely a cost difference. It's 15 extra credits that you have to take for the degree, so it's a little more expensive. But really, our students often ask us, well, what do I need to become employed? And the answer is, to get employed as an aircraft technician, it's just the A&P that is required. The only reason you would add on that degree program is if you plan to work for an employer that requires a degree to go into management. And that's not every employer, but in the cities where the employers are more likely to want that degree, that's when we put the degree program at that school.
Okay, so let me try to figure out every single path.
Okay, good. Okay, that's great.
Let's go.
18 months, all right? I'm just getting power plant, or what was the other one?
Or airframe.
Or airframe. Okay, so 18 months, either, I will repeat, either airframe or power plant. You get 18 months of experience, then you write for both of them, you write general aviation, the FAA part. For both of them, you write general aviation. For airframe, you write the airframe exam. For power plant, you write the power plant exam. And then you have the oral and practical for both of them.
Exactly right.
You get them, but your job opportunities are extremely limited because you can either work on airframes or the power plants, NASA, and and a few repair shops. NASA's a pretty good job.
That's right.
Right? The other experiential route is the 30 months, which consists of working on both. Do you have to demonstrate that you worked on airframes and power plants?
That's right.
Okay.
That's why I said if you got that experience in the military does a great job of providing you that transcript of work.
Okay.
If you got that experience somewhere else, for example, let's say you work for Boeing as a technician or a manufacturer. Boeing doesn't require all of their manufacturers on an assembly line to have an A&P. So you can actually get your 18 months of airframe experience by working for a manufacturer and then come back. But you'll just need to rely on your employer to give you some documentation to bring to the FAA that says, look, I've worked for 18 months on airframes or power plants. Or, look, I've worked for 30 months or more on airframes and power plants. I qualify.
And either or, you can't cheat the system because you're not going to pass that final part.
You cannot cheat the system because you have to pass the exam.
And then the last route is going to school, 22-month certificate.
Right.
And you do that, FAA, pass the exam, and okay. So now, what's the norm in the field? Like, you have percentages and statistics for many of these things. What would you say to Bob and Rachel? Hey, take this route. What's the most traditional route?
Almost everyone comes to A&P school.
Okay.
Let me just put some numbers to that. Last year, about 8,000, the FAA certified about 8,000 people to become A&Ps. Of those 8,000, about 6,500 went to A&P school.
Okay.
Only about 1,500 went through the military or some other route to do it.
Still a relevant enough percentage that it's
relevant.
alive.
We wouldn't want to do away with that because the airlines need them too. But most people go to A&P school and test afterwards and go to work.
Okay.
Are you looking at Google or something right now? How do you know all these like numbers and stuff? I'm glad you're here, bro.
Well, that's what he told me, and that's why I'm holding him honest to the stats, right? Okay, so I think we've discussed everything about the routes. Bob and Rachel will know how and what route to take and where they'll be limited to.
Well,
That's
I do want to kind of emphasize one more thing too. So there's a reason why we do stress you get both the A and P. Let's talk from a supervisor's point of view, working out in the field. So let's say you are legally allowed. Let's say you only got your airframe certification. Technically, you are legally allowed to go work on a power plant, which would be an engine. If I were to ask you right now, let's say you only got your airframe certification, but I'm in a bind. I know you sharp. I know you go out there. You can work on this engine for me. Great. But you ain't got your power plant certification, right? Which means that now I have to stop, find somebody that is power plant certified or myself to come check behind your work. So I just want to make that clear too, that legally and technically you can have your airframe certification and work on power plant. But the problem is, let's say you only got your airframe. You did this work on this power plant. In most cases, you just down that airplane once you signed off your work. It takes an A&P to come behind you to make it airworthy. That's the purpose of the certification.
And
so
and
I
from
hope
an
that
employer
did clear
perspective,
things up.
from an employer perspective, that makes sense why they don't want you.
They don't
There
want to
you
worry.
go.
They don't
Right?
want to worry about that.
Yeah.
Yeah, there you go.
You always need somebody in a supervisory capacity then.
That's right.
All
Always.
time.
And
That's
there's
wild.
also like the legal liability. It's got to be huge,
Mhm.
right? I
right.
mean, these lawsuits must be really, really large.
Well, when you think about some of the more recent aircraft incidents that have happened, the first thing that happens is everyone looks around and says, "Who's to blame?" Everyone's got their finger.
Of course.
You just tell me where to point it.
Yeah.
And so, no airline we work for wants to point their finger at one of their employees who was not properly rated, who did something. And that's why Dominic's right. American, United, Delta will not hire an AIM graduate unless they're a certified AIM graduate. That's why we concentrate so much on certifications.
Makes
So, yeah,
sense.
you could specialize in anything that you want. If you're good with engines, specialize in engines, but still get your A&P.
Get the whole
It just-
AMP so that some manager doesn't have to say, "Hey, Rachel, I need you on the." Oh, Rachel, I can't have you do this because you didn't get that certification. We don't want Rachel in that situation.
And like I said, we make it easy for you. Another reason why I keep preaching it, like just get them both.
Yeah.
Like just make it happen. Makes your life easier. It looks good in the resume too.
Well, I mean, that makes a lot of sense, right? I mean, it would be a legal nightmare. If I was the employer, I wouldn't take it because, I mean, the company will get sued. It's not like the employee. Employee doesn't have fat enough pockets to pay any lawsuit. So at the end of the day, it's the company that's got to bear the brunt of it. And so if you want a job, get them both.
Right.
Yeah, I mean, I could go way more in detail as to cases where that's not really all true, but we're not going to bore you with details. So long story short, just get them both.
Awesome.
Just get them both.
So once you get your certification, can you practice anywhere in America?
Yeah, it's great. It's
Great question.
completely national certification by the Federal Aviation Administration. So, practice anywhere. And here's a fun fact: the next time you look at an aircraft, look for its tail number. On either the tail or the back part of that aircraft, there will be a number. And if that number starts with the letter N, that means it's a United States licensed aircraft. Almost any aircraft you look at is going to have an N. And in order to work on return to service, do the kind of work that a mechanic can do on an N-numbered aircraft, anywhere in America, it has to be an A&P, someone with that FAA certification.
Okay. So you're very limited if you're going down this route if you don't get that certification.
That's right.
Essentially.
Yeah, that's right.
So just get it.
Yeah.
All right. Now I want to discuss I know AIM is involved in helping people get jobs.
Yeah.
Right. So can you first take me through what all institutions do? That way, anyone that's listening with respect to just becoming an aviation technician, what should they, I'll give you an example. I was interviewing a nurse practitioner and she told me that you should contact the institution and get information with respect to how they get you a placement.
Yeah.
Right. And although becoming a nurse practitioner is a very ranked the number one best job, that's once you get one.
Yep.
Right. So how do aviation technicians land a job after they pass their FAA exam? And what do all schools do? And what does AIM do in addition? Because you would have inside information with respect to that.
That's right. So I would say anybody who's looking at an A&P school, an aviation maintenance school, you will want to ask about their career services. And career services, the general term that means what kind of job support am I going to get once I graduate? Hopefully, every college and university in the country has some type of career support. But I will tell you, I have seen it be more common for colleges and universities to be light on that. And we consider the number of our graduates who become employed in the field of aviation as the number one metric that we serve. So we work very hard in career services. If you're an AIM student, then you're going to have a number of career fairs where we will literally introduce you to a dozen or more employers a couple of times through your program. Specifically, when you get toward the latter half of your program, we'll intensify those one-on-one experiences. I've personally developed relationships with the large airlines, United and American being the two most around the country, to make sure that at least twice a year they're coming to the campuses, meeting our students, specifically meeting the ones that are either close to taking the certifications or have recently taken them, so they can interview on site. Just this week, American Airlines was at our Chicago campus, getting to know the students that are getting close to graduation, interviewing them, and passing them along. Now, here's a pro tip for you. Every solid academic institution in America will have some type of accreditation. We're accredited by the Accrediting Commission of Career Schools and Colleges. And ACCSC holds us accountable that says at least 70% of our graduates must be working in field soon after they graduate in order for us to maintain our accreditation. Now, I'm just going to say, if you go to a school that is accredited by somebody who doesn't have that type of intense focus, then probably the staff will work a little less hard on that. For me, for Dominic, it's do or die. At least 7 out of 10 have to be working. Now, overall, it's about 8 out of 10 that are working in field very soon after graduation at AIM. But I'll be honest, if it weren't one of the absolute central metrics for our success, we might not work as hard on it. So we do.
So, man, talk about working hard, and sorry to cut you off, but
no,
talk about working hard when it comes to career services. I mean, I've seen people there help with my resume, help with the students' resumes, obviously. I mean, they do everything they can. They want to know. They have job fairs, like Joel was talking about, where companies would come to the school. And now students are looking at, well, man, I like this company. It's located in Georgia. Never heard of them before. And now they want to move to Georgia. I mean, all because of this career fair. But I've really seen students get their resumes worked on. I mean, they really do everything they can to make sure that as soon as this student graduates, not only are they going to graduate and get their AMP, they're going to go exactly to which state they want to go to. And speaking of which, too, I'm going to go ahead and bring this up. One of the things I do love about walking around the school is literally asking people while they're at school, hey, where you plan on going? Where you plan on going? Like, are you going to Florida? Are you going to Texas? Let's keep in mind, once you do get this AMP, you can go any state you want to. And that's also fun because I know that they're focused and they focus on their families. And I constantly ask that question. And it's so fun to hear, oh, I'm going to stay here. Oh, I plan on going to Wisconsin. And they know they're going to do that because they're going to graduate, get their AMP, and because of the career services. It always just makes me smile.
That is awesome.
I mean, how awesome is that? Like,
that's to get babysit into a job is not something many careers can actually. Yeah. Even careers that are high in demand can't actually make that claim because I mean, typically have to go through a long process and you know you have to do you have to be a lot more independent and you have to be a go-getter, right?
So you're kind of feeling a sense of our passion at AIM that the levels to which students succeed drives everything we do. You're a guy who went to law school. I don't know if your law school included taking the bar and passing the bar as part of the program and also didn't let you go until you had employment.
Please.
But that's what we do.
So funny enough, that's really interesting. I had to apply. I applied to over 1,000 firms. So when I say it was a grind, it was an expensive education. And those are tough times.
Yeah.
Right. I mean, you still have to make payments during that period. Most of these, anyways, I'm not going to get into loans and all that. But at the end of the day, tough times. So,
Yeah.
I mean, the fact that you guys help get people employment, I want to go back to one thing before I just, go on a train of thought.
Yep.
There was an accreditation that you mentioned.
Yes.
That's important. What is that?
So our accreditor, our institutional accreditor, is the Accrediting Commission of Career Schools and Colleges. Actually, not far from here, just outside of Washington, D.C.
Okay, now how do I find out that an aviation school has that accreditation or not?
Yep, great. When you go onto any school's website, they should have a link that says consumer information. The U.S. Department of Education requires any school to list their consumer information. And on that consumer information link, which is honestly usually very small and usually at the bottom of the page, but if you search that page for consumer information, you should find key metrics like whether they're accredited and if they're accredited by whom. Their graduation and employment rates of their students, those kind of key metrics that will tell you something about the quality of the program should be found in that. So really, whether it's Georgetown University or Piedmont Community College or Aviation Institute of Maintenance, all of them should have that consumer information on their website. And within one link, within one click, you should be able to find who their accreditor is.
Okay, that seems imperative, right?
Yep.
So the point of this podcast is to help people line out their paths. So you definitely want to go to a school that's accredited.
That's
because that means those institutions actually prioritize you getting a job.
That's right. They are held accountable for that. And and yes, there are some non-accredited aviation maintenance schools out there. If a school does not have accreditation, the FAA has more strict rules. But just put it this way, when I was advising my kids on where they would go to school after high school, accreditation was a key factor in that decision making.
Okay, awesome. This is why we have the podcast, right? Okay, so now we know how to become one, what you get. You're gonna help land us a job. Now, how much money do students typically? What can they expect right when they start?
Yeah.
What can
can I
they
take that one?
expect?
Go right ahead.
What can they expect within like 5 years, 10 years, and like what's the career growth?
So I'm not going to mention any names. I really want to, but it's because the ladies I'm about to talk about, I'm going to give you a perfect example now. So I had a student, a couple of them, 18 years old when they started. Now they're 19-year-old girls. I'm talking about 3 girls right quick. One is in Salisbury, Maryland, the other 2 are in Richmond. Now, at 19 years old, they got their own place. By the way, they graduated, got their own place. I would say got their A&P. They're working. 19 years old, and she's making, all 3 of them started off with, I want to say, close to $30 an hour. No experience, just their A&P.
$62,000.
But then they got hired right around the holiday time, and they work for a union. And I don't know if you noticed or not, if you work for a union, first of all, no matter almost anywhere where you work at, you can be working time and a half. So that's $45 an hour if you're doing overtime. Oh, but then they work it throughout Christmas and Thanksgiving. Oh, so that's $60 an hour, 19 years old. So,
Wow.
I mean, if that ain't enough proof right there, I mean, they living nice at 19, 20 years old. And these are females, by the way. And actually now, the one that's in Salisbury, shout out Abby, that happened. She's now a lead mechanic at 20 years old. So she went to my class. She graduated at 19. Now at 20 years old, she became a lead.
And what does a lead mechanic make?
So that's a good question. I'm not sure how much they're making out there, but I know it's more than $30 an hour.
Okay.
So
Right off the bat, let's talk non-union. So you said that was about $62,000 a year, right?
The student that he mentioned. And by the way, we're really careful with the way we talk about money because we don't want any prospective student to think that we've guaranteed them anything. So we're careful with that.
Yeah.
But when we talk about the experience of our individual students, then that we're really just talking about the individual student experience. Yeah.
Okay. Well, I mean, okay, so here's the disclaimer. These are not guaranteed numbers.
That's right.
But at the end of the day,
I mean,
what should you expect, right? So firstly, is a union more like popular and prevalent, or do you find non-unionized environments normal in this field?
So if you're working for an airline, a lot of times they're union. Not all of them, obviously, but
What's the majority?
I don't
The,
know.
the majority of airlines are union based.
union. The percentage wise, I have no idea at IBM.
Yeah.
But most airlines are union.
Okay, and so unionized get paid a little bit more, have more job security. Obviously, they have somebody helping them, and
have a natural progression in front of them. Yes.
okay, so it's not abnormal to make about between $60,000 and $80,000 when you're starting.
That's
a great
That's easy.
fairway. That's right.
That's
Okay,
easy.
so
I
2
mean,
years of education and practical experience, and you come out. Let's just go 70 grand.
Yep.
Okay.
Pretty easy.
And so you make 70 grand. Let's say, what about 5 years? Like, where does this go? And like, is there a ceiling?
Yeah,
Do you find
yeah,
that aviation technicians hit a ceiling and then they're all like, okay, now I got to look for leadership jobs. So then they have to go do a smaller or shorter degree program or something. Like, where am I going with this?
You're asking all the right questions. So it is common for our students to make somewhere between $60,000 and $80,000 in their first job. It's common that within 5 years they're at $100,000 or more. And then the question is, how does their leadership stack up? It is at that point where a degree program can make a difference, whether you become a supervisor or a management level and get to 150 very quickly, or continue on that maintenance track and happily make over $100,000. So the degree, I'm just going to say, doesn't help with the first job, but after about 5 or 6 years, it determines just how high you're able to go in the rank. I will say we've got some great articulation agreements. You know the name Embry-Riddle Aeronautical University. Embry-Riddle is well known as probably the best known aviation-related degree program. And our students all qualify, if they've graduated AIM and have the A&P, they qualify to transfer about a third of the bachelor's degree program to Embry-Riddle and can finish that online. So it's common for our students to get our certificate program and the A&P, go to work, and say, all right, let me transfer this Embry-Riddle while I'm working, get an online bachelor's degree, and then I qualify for the $200,000 job as a leader and manager in the organization I'm working for. So I know I'm throwing out rough numbers, but there's this career pathway that is just amazing based on how far you want to take your career and whether you want to join leadership or continue working on a line.
Well, I mean, the reason why I asked this is because when you're 18 to 25, your priorities in life are different, right? And so at that time, 80 grand's great, right? But you drop a kid in there and your life changes. And so you don't want to get capped either at 80 grand, right?
That's right.
So if there's a natural progression, that really, really helps.
That's
and
right.
at least you have an option, because once you have experience, you can go to your employer and be like, hey, I'm kind of a big deal and, pay me more and you can do things, right? But if you're capped, you can't. So, a lot of jobs, they're just like, hey, here's a 2% raise. Here's a 2% raise. Here's a 2% raise. And it's difficult.
That's
right? So
don't forget about engineers too. That's another career path you got if you have a degree, because most engineers need a degree. So there's a whole bunch of aviation engineers out there as well. Another step up if needed. So your future could be bright either way. Depends which way you want to go.
Okay, so now we're talking tangential roles. This is
Mm-hmm.
typically one of the questions that I do ask. So we have our aviation technician, you do a degree program, you get into leadership roles, that's a career path. Then you're an aviation technician, you can do an engineering degree after a few years?
You can go straight to school for that, but the best engineers are aircraft mechanics, in my opinion, my humble opinion. The best aviation engineers they know how to work on airplanes. So I'm just giving you another option that once you do come to school, if you do decide to get your degree after you got some experience and you do want to go a different way, that's an option. It's become an engineer.
What's the difference between an aviation mechanic and an engineer? Like, what different work do they do?
Engineering is a little bit more of a desk job, but it basically creates schematics for either construction of aircraft or repair or different types of repair. It is working obviously with a lot of math and physics, but it really is designing either a repair or new aircraft, not so much the doing. So our students often say, I don't want to be behind a desk with pencils and rulers.
Yeah, facts.
I want to be hands-on. But I completely agree with Dominic. The only mistake you can make in life, in my opinion, is thinking it's either or, because it can be both. We have a lot of people who come with a 4-year degree and go into our program to get an A&P after you going to a university, and then some who go to our school and then later pick up the 4-year degree. All of it is working toward a great progression. I think the important thing, though, is you don't need that degree to have a lifelong career as an aviation mechanic.
I don't have one. There you go.
Yeah.
Another career path too, by the way, after you do some work as an aviation mechanic, is you can also become a pilot. So that's something else you can think about as well. I mean, you can always, so many different things you can do. So if you talk about capping out, that's pretty much impossible in this field. Just
Yeah,
start off as an aircraft mechanic and then see which way you want to go from there. You might want to retire as an aircraft mechanic. Plenty of people do that.
Yep.
I mean, you capping out, you at 6 figures.
That's a good point. I do want to discuss that, and especially because you brought up Rachel and Beverly earlier. So take me through some of the tasks of an aviation technician, and my brain was going in the direction, is this physically taxing? And do you think that at the age of 45, it's stressful on the body? So people do want to consider these other paths, right? Or is the job, it's not that physically taxing, and I have no idea, because I mean, I've never worked as an aviation technician, so what would I know?
So there are plenty of 45 and even 50-year-olds aircraft mechanics, been doing it for years. Obviously, the most experienced ones, they're still out there, and that's what they prefer to do. I'm probably gonna be in that boat. Or you could be an 18-year-old aircraft mechanic. It's up to you. So it's not that physically taxing on your body, in my opinion.
So take
But
me
it
through
depends
some
on where you
tasks
are.
then.
So you got plenty of tasks you go throughout. Keep in mind, we got inspections we got to do. So a lot of times we'll get there. I'll walk you through an aircraft mechanics day at an airline. All right. We have a morning meeting. The lead is the one. Here come the lead mechanic. That's the person that's in charge of the mechanics on the floor. This is how it works in most airlines, not all, by the way. But they would give the mechanic a task of things to do on that aircraft, whether it be inspections, whether it be removing and replacing parts, whether it be troubleshooting. It's all manual based too, by the way. And then once this aircraft is done, keep in mind, by the way, aviation is all about paperwork. So that's something else that's you have to consider. It's not just maintenance. We have to prove that we did everything according to some sort of manual. We have step-by-step procedures. So that's another reason why becoming an aircraft mechanic, as long as you can read, write, and understand the English language, anybody could do it. But also, let's go back on a typical aircraft mechanic day. I get tasked in the morning or the start of my shift. It could be remove replacement parts. It could be inspections. But once I am done with everything, I sign off everything, release the aircraft back to service, and I'm pretty much working on another aircraft, doing the same tasks, inspections, troubleshooting, remove replacement parts, whatever my lead need me to do, sign off everything, release the airplanes, and I'm done for the night, hopefully.
Okay.
A normal, like one of them, I really hope this, nothing went wrong, nice.
So you went over the complicated part, you glossed over it, right? The troubleshooting part, the parts that you just replace and all that. That's probably the chunk of the day, right?
Yes, sir.
And so are you diagnosing as well, or does the lead mechanic do that and then you follow instructions?
Good question. Most of the really good aircraft mechanics are the ones who does the troubleshooting. The lead's just there to help support, and so are the supervisors. The leads can help troubleshooting. Most airlines, you have a union shop. Me being a supervisor in a union shop, I couldn't work on the airplane, so that's why you also have me there to help with the manuals that we have in place. Troubleshooting the aircraft can be very, very easy. I mean, we have something called a fault isolation manual. The FIM, it walks you through step by step on how to troubleshoot that system. So if you have no experience, you just go to a mechanic who is very experienced at it. Y'all grab the FIM, y'all go through it step by step, and you can fix an aircraft pretty easy. I mean, being an aircraft mechanic is nowhere near as hard as you think. As long as you can read, write, and understand the English language.
I'm imagining DC walking away from a plane. We're sitting here going, how'd you fix that plane?
It's so easy.
It's easy.
It's not as hard as you think. I mean, got to be like to be a successful aircraft mechanic it's not as hard as you think.
Do you think you claim that because you've been in the field for over a decade, or do you think the students also feel that way? Let's say the first 4 or 5 years. Are students also feeling like, meh, there's a breeze?
I think so. I mean, the thing is, when you do go to work as an aircraft mechanic, you got to realize that in most places, you're not going to go out there. You just graduated school, right? You just got your A&P. Most places you go to, especially an airline, you're not going to do the work by yourself. Like, as soon as you get there, your first day, you got to change this tire. Good luck. That's not a thing with airlines and a lot of places. It's most of the time in most companies, you got your A&P. You're going to get trained for anywhere from 4 to 6 months before you let you go on your own. That's just for you now. That's another reason that makes it easy. You're going to have you got paperwork you got to sign off, OJT, on-the-job training tasks that you got to sign off for a while. And by the way, that's including even very experienced aircraft mechanics. If I walk in and try to go work for an airline right now, as we speak, and mind you, I got over 15 years experience, I still have to be considered pretty much what some people call a sign behind. This is how serious we take it. This is for airlines, is that I still have to be trained with 15 years experience. I just won an award for the person of the year in aviation. Right. All that means nothing. As soon as I walk through the door as a new aircraft mechanic, that I'm new to them, which means that I got to be working underneath an experienced aircraft mechanic for a while until I can sign off every single bit of OJT. So that's something else that makes it easier.
I appreciate that too.
You're working, it makes it so much easier for you when you've been there for 4 to 6 months, and now you have done most of the tasks you need to do. You're not going to go on no airline, trust me, and most airlines, you're not going to do that, and now you're on your own. Like, yeah, good luck, man. Really hope that you have fun over there. It's not like that. So one more time, it's not nowhere near as hard as you think to become an airline, as long as you're dedicated.
So do you think the job gets redundant?
It can, but it depends on where do you work. For an airline, absolutely not. It nowhere gets redundant. If you're a good aircraft mechanic and we see that you're good, we're going to try to keep giving you more and more tasks. But let's say you work for a manufacturer like Boeing, and you work on like an assembly line, then maybe you could be doing the same thing over and over again. So it depends on where do you want to go. Most repair stations, we mentioned that earlier, so many different airplanes come in. It's almost impossible to get redundant when you have so many different kinds of airplanes you're working on. So it depends on where you want to work. But in most places, no, it's not redundant. It's something new every day.
DC, let me ask a question that he asked, and I'm just going to ask it again. How much really heavy lifting and hard? I mean, you're a big dude. I would say you could probably lift an airplane. Mm-hmm. But I know some of our students are not. Mm-hmm. We've got, 100-pound female. So my question is, how much heavy, hard labor is there to being an aircraft mechanic?
So it's really, some aircraft tires and things like that could be pretty heavy, but the females I mentioned earlier, remember the lead I mentioned earlier, and the 2 females I mentioned earlier, they're 19 years old and they're this big. And one of them weighs about every bit of 100 pounds. So she's an outstanding aircraft mechanic. So it's not as heavy lifted as you want. I mean, little Ariana, sorry if I mentioned the name, you can edit that out if need to. She's like, I promise you, she's 4'11", maybe 5 feet. And she weighs maybe I ain't gonna say how much she weighs. Very little. And she is, and her cousin friend, they are amazing. They're this big. And they have no problem. I mean, they're employee of the month type things on a regular basis.
Piedmont Airlines would never let them go because, like I said, they can get into a small space and do such detail work, and it's
we
just
talked
awesome.
about that earlier. Yeah. We talked about the whole heavy lifting thing, but we also mentioned that a whole bunch of females are like some of the best aircraft mechanics because of how small they are. So don't really worry about the heavy lifting. If they can do it, you can do it. You'll be fine.
All right. Well, I mean, I was just wondering because if it's a laborsome job, then you would see a decline as people age, right? So then it's good to know that there's other options that they can take and, they can make money somehow because then you can cap out after 15 years of service. You're like, oh, man, back's gone or something,
Well, if that's the case, you can also go to something else when you talk about is inspectors.
Yeah.
Like you have aircraft mechanics, but you can also become, your whole job is an inspector. Those are very, very important, by the way. I mean, I guess you can tell that by the whole title. You can be, if you decide that you don't want to work on aircraft anymore, or maybe like you just want to get promoted, that's a thing, is that you just become an inspector where your whole tools is a mirror and a flashlight. You inspect the work that the mechanics do. Like I said, there's so many different avenues. If you're saying something about, okay, I'm tired of being an aircraft mechanic, you can go so many different ways. They have maintenance trainers there. People like myself.
Yeah, that's right.
Who you ain't got to worry about work on their aircraft. They're dedicated just to that airline to do recurrent training. I mean, there's so many different ways
And I'll tell you, the one other position that I have to talk about is being an instructor. As a guy who runs 15 aviation maintenance schools around the country, I always am looking for qualified, passionate instructors, people who worked on the line like DC did, and who say here later in my career, whether it's when I'm at retirement age or pre-retirement age, wherever I am, we're always looking for instructors of every age. And if I had one message to any aircraft technician out there working, it's spend some time as a teacher. Call me directly, because I'd love to talk to you about teaching the next generation of aircraft technicians.
Please. And you know what, man? I learned this from a young lady by the name of Nancy Jones. Hey, by the way, she's tattooed on my arm right there. She's my very first aircraft mechanic instructor. When I first started school, she's still there, by the way. She taught me one thing. She said the best way to learn is to teach. And to his point, trust me, you do learn a lot by becoming an instructor. Yeah. So it
forces you to find out where your knowledge gaps are.
That's right.
Right? And that's why I actually repeat these things, because I notice the same exact thing. It's like whenever you try to tell somebody, it actually explains, or it actually articulate or sets out what you're lacking, right? And then while you guys are here, I can fill in those voids. So that's why if any of my viewers are like, bro, you are repeating information too much.
You're doing good. You were an outstanding interviewer, man. I give you credit.
Thank you.
You up here learning everything, repeating everything back to us. I'm over here like, wow, are you looking at Google right now?
I appreciate that. I try. So in order to become a successful aviation technician, what type of characteristics do you need? And what type of characteristics should avoid this job? Because I feel like there's a personality for every job, right? So what type of, it's a two-part question. You can intertwine, answer however you like. I want to know if you have these characteristics, you would really flourish here. And if you have these characteristics, consider a different profession.
Is that me?
Why don't you go ahead? I've got an answer too. Why don't you start us?
So I had another good friend of mine tell me this quote, and I still live by it to this day. You can apply this quote to any type of field. He said, it's better to be valuable and not experienced than to be experienced and not valuable. And I asked him, what does that mean? And he said, well, being valuable means you show up on time. If that's a flaw of yours, so you could come to work on time. If you can stay late if you're available. If you can do what you're told, that's being valuable. You don't have to be experienced to do that. You get help for that. Now, here it is, if you have these flaws, if you call yourself experienced but not valuable, which means that, yes, me, I have over 15 years, but if I show up late on a regular basis, if I leave early, if I am available to stay late but I don't, you go tell me to do something, I don't do it. I can't follow directions whatsoever, but I have all this experience. I'm on a different level now. I won this award, bro. I could do anything I want, but I won't be valuable at all and I am very experienced, but I'm not valuable. So you have to be able to follow directions, follow people's lead. Don't be hesitant to look at somebody and go, well, that person's younger than me. I'm not going to listen to anything they say. If you have those traits, then one more time, you can come to the school and we'll teach you not to do that. Also, you have to be honest and trustworthy to be a really good aircraft mechanic. I mean, but that's with anything, but definitely aviation maintenance, because you got people's lives in your hands. You have to understand that we're more worried about you letting us know that you broke that part, because the company can easily afford that other part. We might even have a lot of time to remove and replace that part. We're not worried about you breaking anything. Just let us know. If you're not a honest and trustworthy person, that means that you're going to be out there on your own, working in a tail of an aircraft or something where we can't see you. You're going to sign out to work, but you know you just broke this part, and now the aircraft takes off. Look at your face. You see that? So that's something else that you need to have, is you have to be an honest and trustworthy person. We have to be able to trust that everything that you're saying, because not all tasks have to be inspected. All the major tasks when it comes to flight controls, very important computers, things like engines, there's a lot of major tasks that have to be inspected. But some, you can go in the aircraft, you're going to change a reading light and a light bulb. I'm not going to come behind you and inspect that. You're an AP. You could change a reading light. Like, you know what a reading light is, by the way? You're sitting in the cabin.
Oh, the reading light. Yeah.
You go change
You
that.
accidentally hit the call button and go, oh, no, I didn't.
Like, you go change that. I mean, you're going to do it on your own. But let's say you go up there, you change that reading light, but then you leaned over and you broke something. And you ain't tell nobody. Well, see, it's a problem.
DC's out to get you.
Yes. So, be honest and trustworthy. If you don't have those flaws, then come to school. We'll train you to be honest and trustworthy. Trust me on that.
So I heard
but you
reliable.
don't have those. You got to be reliable.
Reliable was the first one.
valuable.
Honest, trustworthy. So these are the characteristics that you would recommend somebody that's an aviation technician possess. What about who are the people that leave the field? Right? Because not to say that it's a bad profession or anything. It's just that, certain people aren't made for every job, right?
So a lot of people, if they leave the field, maybe their schedule was a problem, and maybe they don't realize they could go to a different company and work a different schedule. You have to realize when they come to work in airlines, we keep talking about airlines a lot, and I get that. We work overnight a lot. So maybe a schedule issue could be an issue. But most people that normally get in this field, they don't leave. If they do leave, it could be family issues or things like that. The same way you would leave any other field. But once you get in, you're pretty much golden.
So I'm guessing that a characteristic that we did not discuss is that you need to be hands-on, right?
Oh, and by the way, you can't use drugs. That's people who leave the field as well.
Okay. Talk to me about that. You get drug tested frequently?
Oh, it depends on where you work, but absolutely. You work for any airline is going to be randoms. I mean, doesn't that make you feel better though?
Yeah,
Do you
definitely,
want somebody using drugs, work on the airplane, you or your mom
is that
by the
all
phone?
drugs?
Oh, absolutely. When it comes
Marijuana,
to marijuana,
cocaine,
and alcohol too, by the way.
Alcohol as
It's
well.
alcohol tested. I can tell you how that works. It's real simple. A lot of times your supervisor, I will get your paperwork in, and I can't tell you, like, I know you're about to get drug tested, but I can't tell you that until you actually, it depends on the company, until you actually clock in. And then I can walk up to you and go, hey, here you go. So that's how randoms normally work.
Now,
Not that. I'm shocked. What do you mean by alcohol testing? Because that would turn a lot of people off in this country.
Oh, no. Now, while you're at work. You can't drink while you're at work.
Okay, yeah. Okay.
Where you can't hold, like, you do realize you can't drink while you're at work. You can't be drunk while you're at work.
That's
alcohol
perfect.
testing. I'm glad you cleared that up, by the way, because you never know what people are here thinking.
There's 100 million people that are just like,
oh, no, I'm done. I'll be one of them.
Not for
but
me.
when you off the clock, obviously do anything that's legal.
Yeah.
But while you're on the clock, just realize that you can get a breathalyzer as well.
Yeah. Oh, okay. But in terms of drug testing, if you ever smoke weed, you are not eligible for this.
Well, no, that's not the case. Nowhere near.
Yeah. Since you brought it up, now we got to specify.
Yeah.
If it's in your system.
If it's in your system at the time of work, then yes,
So
it's FAA thing.
At
but yes.
time of work, well, the thing with weed is it stays in your system.
But it's not federally approved. So the thing is, it's legal in your state, right? That you can smoke weed. You can do that all day as long as you're not an aircraft mechanic working for a company that drug tests. If I'm off and then I go smoke and then I get drug tested, the FAA says it's one shot, one deal.
So let me just, to be very clear, marijuana stays in your system. If you're tested for marijuana and it is in your system, you will lose your license. At this point in our history, you can't smoke weed and be an aircraft maintenance technician that works on an airport.
What if you have an exception?
Alcohol, on the other hand, it doesn't work that way.
Yeah.
If you have alcohol in your system while you're on the clock, then that's a problem. But if you haven't drank, that leaves your system after a day or less than 24 hours, and so bottom line is, I can say to anyone who's thinking about this career, you don't have to stop drinking.
Mm-mm.
You just can't have it in your system while you're on the clock.
Mm-hmm.
But you do have to stop smoking marijuana.
What if you have glaucoma?
Then you're probably not going to be an FAA certified technician working on an airport.
Most likely
Fair
not.
enough. I just want to make sure
Now,
listeners
you can
know.
still be an aircraft mechanic at certain places. Some people do accept that if you have a medical card, but you also got to keep in mind, this is aviation. So if you're working for an airline, you're probably at a major airport. You have to keep in mind, it's not just the companies and FAA's rules, it's also the airport rules as well.
Yeah.
I mean, so
we have this conversation with our students. If you're an AIM student, you're going to have a person like me saying, here's what we're going to do, folks. We're going to improve our lives in every way. An education at AIM is not, believe it or not just about becoming an aircraft technician. It's about changing your lives for the better. And so we're very open with our students.
Mm-hmm.
It doesn't mean you can't have alcohol off duty, but you can't come to work with it in your system.
That one's reasonable. I don't even think
It's
there's
like
an
any
issue there.
other
I
job
mean,
like that,
that's
yeah.
every job.
Yeah.
Right?
And-
So I
There
can
you go.
take that
Yeah.
part
So it's
out.
the same
It
thing.
doesn't even matter.
Yeah.
Same
But
thing.
I just wanted to
But
make sure.
marijuana is going to be a thing. Now, will someday the FAA change with the way the country seems to be changing with that? I don't know. I can't even speculate, but I can tell you that right now, and as long as I've been a part of this organization, the FAA has had a no tolerance policy for marijuana in your system. And so we have to be very clear with our students. Part of our education is agreeing that you're going to stop smoking marijuana.
Okay, so that's great.
Yeah.
So the characteristics needed, you definitely got to be reliable, honest, trustworthy. The characteristics that'll get you out of this profession is getting high, and the opposites of those.
Yeah.
So anything else? Any other reason?
Yeah, I'm going to throw in one more trait that I look for, and then a trait that makes students not stick with the program, because not 100% of the students graduate for sure. The one thing that I want to add to the attribute list is the word respect. I'm not adding experience turning wrenches. I'm adding respect. When you come onto one of our campuses, you will find students looking at the faculty and staff right in the eye. You'll see us, believe it or not, train people how to shake hands, how to speak well, how to, I won't say stand at attention as in the military, but I'll come almost there, where it's a very respectable environment. And students who might come in and haven't lost, it takes a sense of maturity to give respect and then receive respect and expect respect to be a part of the environment. And that is absolutely what we see at AIM. On the other hand, when a student comes in and is self-focused or kind of has a sensibility of, well, everyone should sort of bow to me and my needs, that's not a great fitting personality trait. Because to work around aircraft and on a team with aircraft, there is the respect that we help students develop in school turns into a respect that happens among teams where there is no individual. I can tell you this firmly. There's no one individual who's going to successfully turn an airliner back to service the next morning. It's a team. And so part of the AIM education is losing some of the self-centeredness that might come with a less mature personality, and gaining a sense of respect, taking that selfishness or self-focusedness and replacing that with mutual respect. Students who can't do that are the ones who often don't pass and stay with the program. Students who do find a kind of inspiration with a mutual respectful environment where a classroom turns into a team, that's the ones who really succeed.
And that's not just in the classroom, obviously out there in the field too. Good point with that, by the way, is that you got to be able to work well with others. I brought that up earlier. Like you have to be able to work well. So remember, I just told you I'm avionics. Well, I have to be able to go with somebody who's strong on engines.
Yeah.
And vice versa. But we do train you on that, by the way. We try to make sure that you understand that you got to be in a team environment. The same way Joel just mentioned. Like if you're not good with that, then you'd be shocked how good people become with that once they graduate our program, because we make you work together with people. We try to make sure that you do understand that you have to be a team player. So that was a good point.
That is awesome. Well, all right. While you're on the job, do you find that the job is stressful?
Depends. Like any other job.
And on average, like you work an entire year.
Yeah.
Right? Like I'll give you an example. An attorney's life is typically stressful, right? Because everything is a debate, argument. You're constantly trying to justify things. You think certain things are reasonable, but the other side doesn't feel that way, right? So there's always that element of stress. So I can start a day very cheery and get, just have these. I sometimes come out of a call like, are you kidding me? Right? Like, and that's normal. That's absolutely normal. So it gets stressful because of that, right? So as an aviation technician, do you feel like the day-to-day is stressful? And do people feel exhausted by the time they're done their shift on a day?
Let's talk about facts here. All right. Most high-paying jobs are stressful. It is what it is. Most high-paying jobs are stressful. A lot of our jobs and tasks, no, most nights I don't find to be stressful. Not most nights. But some nights, absolutely. Yeah, keep in mind, if you're working on an airline, you do realize that sometimes aircraft come in late. Like it's supposed to be here at 10 o'clock at night. Well, now it doesn't get here because of weather or whatever happened throughout the day. Now it's not here to 1. This same aircraft got to be on the gate in 5 hours.
Right.
Like you're waiting at the gate because you paid to get on this aircraft. Of course, that could be a stressful situation. But we do have things in place to make sure that you relax, we get the aircraft to the gate on time safely. But can it be stressful, to answer your question? Of course. Like any high-paying, responsible job. But there's no difference, not as stressful as most jobs are here. I bet you, and no disrespect at all about this, I'm thinking an attorney's job might be more stressful than mine.
Oh,
So,
I mean, it's considered one of the most stressful jobs.
And you got to keep in mind, when it comes to the stress, it's a team environment. Yeah. So even though you are stressed, we can recognize that and we can help and adapt and bring help over there towards you if needed. Now, you're an outstanding attorney. A lot of times, I'm assuming you work up by yourself, or do you?
All the time.
Yeah, so that's something that's completely different when it comes to aviation maintenance. Your stress, I could pick up on that and go, hey, Joe, you might want to go over there and help this person out, blah, blah, blah. So we can help with the whole stress thing. But can it be stressful? Not going to lie, of course it is. But there's so many things we have in place to make it a lot more easier for you.
I'm guessing a good sense of humor helps.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
Right? That's a characteristic that'll help you.
Well, that's right. A good sense of humor, but one that is tempered and careful, right? Because jokes and funny business on the job can get in trouble. It's interesting. The FAA did a study decades ago and found that 90% of aircraft incidents come from human factors on the job. In other words, it's not because a wing just decided to lose a bolt. It's because some inspector failed to find that in an inspection, and that's what caused an accident or an incident. And these human factors we're talking about are things like stress, or inability to communicate well, or too much was demanded upon them in that 1 a.m. situation. Nobody said, plan on the 5 a.m. flight leaving at 6 a.m. because we need more time, right? So these human factors are so important in getting things right in an aircraft repair situation. And so that's why when you asked us, what do you need to be successful? We didn't say a set of wrenches and experience on cars and nothing technical. We said respect and communication and a true interest in learning, So it's amazing. DC can teach anybody who wants to become an aircraft technician with those right sort of internal pieces, all of the tricks and tools of the trade in order to be successful. It really is about the person and whether they're ready to become a great team member in a wonderful profession.
So it seems like all the stress is due to extraneous factors. The job itself, as long as in your control, is pretty good. You're having a good time. chilling out with some friends, working on something, and, conducting professional services, right? But all these external things can influence and make your life a little bit worse. Is that accurate?
I like the way you said that.
Okay. So you've mentioned on multiple occasions now that the shift can get longer. How? What's an average shift?
So all aircraft that you work on, I can't say all. I hate the word all. Most aircraft you work on, they have a deadline. I don't care what industry that you're in. If you're working at a repair station and I'm working on your airplane, you're going to want your airplane back at a certain time. Right, a certain time and date. If you're working on the airlines got the aircraft could be able to the gate on time. So that's what I meant by I could get a little longer. Your shift might be over, but this overtime comes in, the time and a half, if you're available, is that you can, if you're chosen to do that, you can stay a little bit later to help get the aircraft completely done. Whether you're at a repair station or if you're working an airline, that's really matters. So
are
that's
you required? Or is that the reliability part?
That's the whole thing, that if you're available, and trust and believe me, most aircraft mechanics take advantage of it because, it's time and a half. And they do have that factor. They do want to see a lot of mechanics that's very, very good. If they're available, they would stay late because they started this task and they want to finish it. And if you're authorized to do that, then most aircraft mechanics take advantage of it. That's what I meant by the task get longer. I mean, I'm sorry, your shift can get longer.
What's an average normal day like? Not normal day, sorry, like a normal week. Like, do you have work-life balance, or does this demand a lot of you? Like in excess of 40 hours, less than 40 hours?
Oh, your scheduled shift is, for most places, is 40 hours a week. A lot of airlines is 4 days a week, 10 hours a day.
Okay.
So you got 3 days off.
So it's like nurses.
I'm trying to tell you, and you got flight benefits. So if you
that's one of the questions.
Unlike nurses.
If you work for an airline, you have to work for an airline for flight benefits. Yeah. But like you, your significant other, if you have kids, them, your parents, you got friends, they all get some sort of flight benefits. You got 3 days off to enjoy them too. So take advantage of them.
We had our first graduate of our Chicago campus. I told you we're opening our Phoenix campus next week with our grand opening. Prior to that, 2 years ago, we opened Chicago. And our first graduate of Chicago was graduated when he was 19 years old, got his A&P, and had worked immediately for American Airlines. American Airlines, in his first month on the job, here's a 19-year-old Southside Chicago kid making $75,000. And American, was so, loved him. He's a great guy. And they interviewed him for their internal employee magazine. And they said, what do you like about your first month on the job? He said, well, I like that I'm already saving up for my trip to Italy. So here's this 19-year-old kid making $70,000, which, by the way, is about $20,000 more than I made after a PhD as working as a professor. All of my students made more than I made after my first job in 10 years of school. But planning his first trip to Italy at 19 years old, and because he's got the flight benefit, and as soon as he hits his months, the months required to get that flight benefit, brother's off to Italy, and it's like, this is the coolest job ever.
I've had friends that live here and flew up to Rhode Island just because they wanted lobster for dinner and they flew back. I can't make this up, man. I am not. This is so. This use your flight benefits. But one more time, I'm gonna make this clear. Not all aircraft mechanics have flight benefits.
Yeah,
you have to work for the airline. To have that. Now, if you work for the airline, then you have flight benefits with that airline. So if you work for them directly or you work for a regional, like Piedmont is a regional for American. You work for Piedmont, you fly American. Anywhere American goes that's in the continental United States, you pretty much fly for free. You fly overseas, then it's a tax and something you got to pay, but simple.
So something popped into my head and I forgot to ask this. You had mentioned there was a study conducted by the FAA and vast majority of the issues took place as a result of human error.
That's right.
Do you feel like the FAA or just this profession is susceptible to AI? And do you already feel like AI is being introduced? The reason why I mention this is because currently America really, really needs aviation technicians. What
Facts.
about 15 years from now, right? Do you see computers coming and wrecking this profession?
I believe that there are certain elements of the aviation industry that artificial intelligence will actually help for, assist, and probably the biggest example will be piloting. So right now, as a commercial pilot, there always must be two, a pilot, a co-pilot, and because of the obvious fail-safe, if one thing happens to one individual, there needs to be another individual there to take care of that. I believe that we will see within 10 to 15 years, we will be able to reduce the pilot number with artificial intelligence because, quite frankly, the autopilot systems are so good today. You add some level of immediate diagnostic to the situation, and that can help a lot. But what I don't think that is going to be easily replaceable is the manual work, the testing, the inspections that have to be done both with new aircraft as they come off a flight line and with all aircraft as they get repaired. I just don't know. I know that computers can diagnose computers, but computers can't diagnose loose bolts or cracks that are imperceptible to even the human eye, that we use destructive testing to find the subatomic cracks in steel. These things have to be diagnosed by a human. So certainly we're going to use computer aided tools to help us in our human-based diagnostics, but for maintenance, we're just not on that pathway right now where a computer can look at an aircraft wing, can look at the strut on a landing gear and make any kind of intelligent decision about whether it's time to perform a maintenance. So computers will help us with our manual work, but the manual work is really here for a long, long time, as long as airplanes work like they do.
There's way too many different aircraft out there, by the way, for computers to try to fix every single one of them. If you Google how many makes and models there are of aircraft right now, and not to mention helicopters, things like that, there's way too many of them out there for computers to come in and take our jobs anytime soon. You have to make them all one airplane. That'd be the easiest way. You don't have any idea how long that's going to take? to ground every single airplane right now and say you can only fly these. Yeah. That would be the only way I could think about it, but we're going to be here for a while. Aviation maintenance, we ain't going nowhere.
I feel
we're
like
growing, getting bigger and bigger.
In general, I think that as well. I actually think this profession will probably be more in demand than some of the other professions. For instance, according to, I think it was Forbes, lawyers and accountants and consultants are going to take some of the biggest hit from AI, right? So, and now you're saying pilots, right? Yep. So all the other jobs which were allegedly prestigious, not allegedly, they were deemed prestigious, they're going to take a huge hit, right? And I'm not afraid from a legal perspective. I do think that AI is actually going to make my job significantly easier, right? But a lot more stressful as well. Like a lot more stressful because as the amount of AI increases, the type of work that I'm going to have to do at work is just going to be mentally draining, right? So all creative work, anything that's redundant, AI is going to do. And you're already seeing that in the field, right? So I do think that some of the more hands-on work is going to be more in demand if you want to make more money. So it's good to know.
I'll tell you what will be bringing change and innovation to aviation maintenance, though. It's not so much the computer-assisted devices. It really is the electronic vehicle kind of way it goes. So there's a term called eVTOL, electronic vehicle, electronic vertical takeoff and landing. And basically, we can all picture a drone in our head. Take that drone and multiply a scale of 20, and now you have a drone that's electric powered, and can potentially fly human transport. And so in the A&P that we talked about, the airframe and power plant, the airframe will still be airframe. Electronic vehicles will not change the way aerodynamics work, the way flight works, the way wind propulsion is required. But what will change is the engines, the power plant side. So I would envision that within 10 to 15 years, AIM will offer probably an airframe, a traditional power plant, and a new technology power plant, where more work on batteries, more work on electrical propulsion systems, not just jets, go in there. So I think that DC will be teaching the airframe like he's teaching the airframe as long as he wants to teach for me. But he's going to have some new skills in electric power plant systems, coming soon.
That's exciting.
Yeah.
Awesome. Well, we were talking about perks before I cut everyone off and brought AI in. So one of the perks that you mentioned was you fly a lot.
You work for an airline.
If you work for an airline, what other perks does an aviation technician get that you wouldn't know unless you were actually an aviation technician? Other than the 4 days, right? 4 days on. That's a big one.
That depends on where you work, but yeah, that's always a big one. A lot of repair stations even go that route as well. But one of the biggest perks for me personally is that I can move anywhere I want.
Yep.
I mean, once I get this A&P, I can literally, if I don't want to be in VA right now, you could pick the city, and I just go. I mean, I can't really say the city, the state. You could pick the state, and I can go. And that's something else that's always, like, you always gonna have a job. That's one of the biggest perks. If you want some encouragement too, by the way, and I don't know if you have to edit this out, but hopefully you don't. There's a website that's called JS Firm. All right, it's Juliet Sierra FIRM, which is Foxtrot India Romeo Mike.com. That should be some motivation for you right there, because that website is only for aviation people. So aircraft mechanics, things like that. If that's something as a student or you right now, if you think about becoming an aircraft mechanic, that's just one site that can prove to you you can move to any state that you want, because that will show you all the job listings out there, and it stays current. I think that you should do some research before you do decide to be an aircraft mechanic on what's your possibilities on where you can live. That is one of the biggest perks, hands down, period. You do realize too, I don't know if we told you this, the A&P does not expire. There's only 3 ways that you can lose it. It's even surrendered, it's given up, which means revoked, or it's suspended. That's it. There's only 3 ways. It never expires. So that's something else. That's another perk. As I mentioned earlier, we're not going anywhere. So if you decide to get your A&P and become an aircraft mechanic, this is something you can literally potentially do for the rest of your life.
So why aren't more people joining? Right? What's the barrier?
No,
because
most people don't. All right, let me answer this one.
He's going to give you my answer. Go ahead.
All right, you ready? Most people don't know about us, and I'll prove it.
Yeah, I never knew.
Yeah.
Let me ask this question. How many aircraft mechanics do you know? Don't worry, I'll wait.
Zero.
That's why.
One today.
Most people don't even know we even exist. Yeah. I mean, when I asked that, I've been asking that question for years. I asked somebody, how many aircraft mechanics do you know? Most of them go, you, like me, I'm the only one they know. So that's one of the biggest things. That's why we're glad that we are here, is because that's one of the barriers. They don't know we exist. And they don't know how easy it is to become an aircraft mechanic. I mean, think about how many aircraft there are flying around right now as we speak. Like, do you have any idea?
See a day if you just look up?
Like, do you understand the demand for us now? Like, you don't even know too many of us out here, but you see, this also answers your question about the demand for us. That's why you brought us here, and I'm so happy about this, because a lot of people just don't know we exist.
It's odd because, I mean, yeah, you're right. I never knew about this. I found out by Googling pilots and through the aviation industry. Then I got to the award, and through the award, we got here. So
I'm asked too.
Yeah, it's the same answer. The ignorance or the lack of the knowledge of this profession is the biggest deterrent. It's the only thing. I'm asked the question a different way. I'm asked sometimes, Joel, who's your biggest competitor? And I can talk about other schools that do a great job. Frankly, just about all of aviation maintenance schools do a great job preparing people for the industry. I don't consider competitors. I consider them partners to fill the need for aircraft mechanics. But there is one competitor I have, and the one competitor that I have that is my biggest competitor is the lack of knowledge about this career. If I could do one thing It would be to appear tomorrow in every high school around the country and say, want to make a good living after only just a couple of years after high school in a program, and be able to fly anywhere in the world. All of the answer is going to be yes to all of this. To me, the biggest piece of advertising that I could do is not about the qualities of AIM and the brilliance of DC, although both of those are great. The biggest thing I want to do is say, aircraft maintenance is a phenomenal job. It's not a grease monkey job. It's, it's not a hard, backbreaking job. It's a real profession that has endless opportunities and something that I think just about everybody should consider. Do I or someone I know, want to be in a position like this, and then what's the nearest and best school for me to attend?
To this day, I still love saying I'm an aircraft mechanic.
Mm-hmm.
To this day. Something else I do love too, when I do say, hey, if somebody asks a question, they be like, yeah, so what do you do? I'm an aircraft mechanic. You don't have any idea how many times people go, what?
Yeah.
Like, you're a what? And I still love saying that.
Do you work at NASA? And some do work at NASA, but others work at a local small airport, working on small engines or big engines, or,
And
so much
SpaceX,
variety.
right? SpaceX must hire you guys too.
Yes.
SpaceX has a lot of AIM graduates working for them. They often come to our school in Orlando, very close to where they are based in Florida, and so does Tesla. And I said that we should talk some about our employer partners. We have a national agreement with American Airlines where they come and interview the top 10% of our students. United Airlines, Piedmont Airlines, we've talked about. Many of these actually pay scholarships to students while they're in school to help them pay for their tuition, with a return that they will get an interview and accept that interview if they're offered a job. There are MROs, those maintenance repair overhaul stations, like AAR, great partner with us that interviews and students while they're in school. And then helps them pay for their tuition. There are actually a lot of aerospace companies that will interview students, say, I like you, I want to shore you up for a job later. Let me help pay for some tuition now through our tuition payment program, and that helps everyone. And so it really is a big family. And
Now you brought up some good stuff.
Mm-hmm.
How much does it cost on average to get your certification?
Yeah, so our program costs right about $50,000 for the full 2 years. And that's not the least expensive. If there's a community college in a person's area, community college usually has a lower tuition rate than us. We're a private school, and so we don't get state funding to help with our costs. So our cost is a little bit more. But I consider us a premium product. So with our $50,000 tuition over the full 2 years, that's roughly $15,000 per academic year, or right around $25,000 per calendar year, more or less is what it costs. But with that comes the career services that you just won't find at every school.
Yeah.
We pay for the exam portion. In other words, you don't pay extra to get your A&P certification, whereas most schools you'll have to pay extra. And so there are a lot of things that we build into the experience that are kind of a premium product. And I will just say, if you come to any one of our campuses, no matter which you come to, you'll see more aircraft and types of aircraft than you'll usually see at a smaller school. Just to give you a sense of it, if there are about 100 community colleges around the country, and they have an average of about 50 students per community college, and the amount of equipment they have there is much smaller for that smaller population. Our schools have an average of about 350 students, and they're much larger campuses, a lot more aircraft, and thus a lot more exposure to the kinds of things. So I'm not saying better. I'm just saying there are different qualities. And yes, my tuition is a little higher than you'll pay at a community college. And we work hard to make sure that experience is kind of you do get what you pay for, and it stands out.
So you're not eligible for scholarships, you said?
Yes, we have a lot of scholarships. We do have Pell Grants, access to Title IV, U.S. Title IV grants and loans. So it's very common for, our common student will, may be qualified for Pell Grants, may be qualified for the student loans, may be qualified for scholarships, may qualify for employer contributions. Like I think all of your students right now are getting contributed to the airline that they'll work for. So there are a lot of different ways that you can pay for your education, and we try to make it affordable for every student.
Okay. And the scholarships, not scholarships, the tuition reimbursement, I guess you can say, from the airlines.
Yeah.
How does that work, right? I mean, you said the top 10%, certain airlines do that.
Yeah.
I mean, do you tell these students at the beginning, at the onset, that, hey, if you study enough, there's a ticket to get a percentage of your tuition paid? Like, do you have a deal? Is it all the time? Like, how do we get somebody? Because I mean, if there's ignorance with respect to the actual profession, right? People would want to know. You can incentivize them, right, by saying, "Hey, get into this, and then these airlines will help you pay off this percentage." So, can you talk a little bit about that? How do you decrease their cost?
Yeah. So we work individually with every student to figure out what they will be eligible for. If there is an airline that is interviewing for one of their pay programs, we'll set students up for that. Right now, I think there are about, I'm going to guess, 20 or so students at AIM Norfolk that Piedmont Airlines is paying for their tuition. Well, guess what? They interviewed for that. They competed for those slots, and not everybody qualified for that. And so those who were not selected for that program will then sit with our financial aid officer and decide, okay, well, then what kind of Pell Grant might be available? What other type of scholarship programs are available? Do I want to use student loans for this? Can I make a cash payment while I'm in school, or do I have a family member who can help with that? It's different for everyone. What I would never do is enroll a student with the promise that something might come to them, because I would never want a student to, hope for one thing and that not become a reality for them. So a student at AIM really sits down with a personalized financial counseling and advising, and knows exactly where the contributions are going to come from before they start, so that they can plot it out. We never want to surprise, at any point during their education.
Except for when somebody pays something off for you.
Except a great surprise. And that does happen. I failed to mention Boeing. Our top employers at AIM, Boeing Airlines, Boeing is the top. They hired 15% of our graduates in 2023. And Boeing has is renowned for having a great pay, a great sign-on bonus, and even help for people to relocate, and that's how they're able to be very persuasive. The next highest is United Airlines, and we've got a school. We're sitting here halfway between Dulles Airport and the Manassas AIM campus, and Dulles loves to bring students from Manassas and put them right to work here. And so that relationship, they hired, I believe it's 9 to 11% of our graduates last year. And the next is Delta Airlines. And, just go down the list, all of these sort of marquee names are the ones that are seeking our employees, and all of them have a different sort of pay structure and benefit structure. And I'll tell you what I say to my students when they get that sign-on bonus. I always say to them, now, put that toward your student loans now.
Yeah.
I know you want that new set of wheels, but what you want to do is pay yourself first. Paying off that loan is the best way to free up your future.
Man, there's so many people. Mind you, we're in Norfolk, Virginia, and I'm hearing people that's going to Boeing, and they have a family and things like that, right? This is real people that's graduated from the school. This Boeing that they got hired from is out in Washington State. They are paying people, no experience, the only thing guys A&P, to move them and their family from VA all the way out to Washington State. They're already paying for that. They give them a sign-on bonus, and then their pay is, remember that 30 I mentioned? I won't mention how much they're making. It's up there with no experience. All they guys A&P. I mean, life-changing. And that's just Boeing. There's so many different companies that's like that. You just come to school and you graduate, and then it goes back to me saying this is what I love so much is we going around the students asking, where you going? What state you moving to? You and your family going to? And it's funny to hear that. And like, it's out there, man. It's so easy to, like, once you come to school, you have a guaranteed future.
So it's funny because I was wondering why other professions don't do that.
Mm-hmm.
So it's good because, I mean, so after COVID, nurses had a huge shortage.
Yep.
So they're doing it, but they are providing sign-on bonuses and things of that nature. But I feel like they need to do more, right? And it sounds like maybe in aviation technician, I guess you got to live through each one. So I don't want to comment that they're not doing it. But I'm happy to hear that at least in this profession, they're really incentivizing, because that's how it ought to be if you're high in demand. I mean, this is like chump change for the companies that are paying it. So, I mean, I'm happy that, you know.
Now, just know that every single job isn't doing that.
No, I understand.
Not all
I
of them
understand.
Make that clear. But
Lots
there's a lot
of caveats.
Of them that's paying for
That's right.
relocation, though. There's
That's
definitely enough out there that's paying for
We
relocation.
don't want anyone to hear this and say, "Oh, I've got a guarantee."
Yeah, it's
but
not
I
that.
got to tell you, I can guarantee this. We're going to work hard for every individual student who comes and says, "I think this is my future." We're going to do our very best to make this a lucrative and successful. And he said life-changing. I'm going to say generation-changing experience. Because I'll tell you this, so many of my students have never come from homes that just never had the kind of financial opportunity that comes with a career in aviation maintenance. And I mean, DC, I'm going to take a risk here and just say you're a great example of that.
Facts.
You didn't come from a background where your family could travel the world, where your family made a good, solid middle-class living, and you said, I think this, I've heard you say, this industry changed your life. And that's what we're here to do.
Awesome. Well, I mean, I feel like anyone that listens to the episode has a solid idea of how to become an aviation technician, what to expect once they actually get there, the amount of money that they'll make, the incentives. I like to close off all. Is there anything else about the career that you would like to talk about? Is there something that we missed, you feel?
I'm just going to say aviation is a smaller community than you would ever guess. You hear companies like Boeing, which is 2% of the gross national product of America, the biggest company we have, and United Airlines, American, all these international names, and you would think, well, that's so big. Little old me could never be a part of that. But what I've found in this industry, we all know each other, and to know me in DC is to know the CEO of American Airlines, who was at one of our campuses not long ago, and know Pete Buttigieg, the Secretary of Transportation, who came to one of our campuses not too long ago, and senators, and the governor was at your campus just 3 weeks ago, and it's really a smaller world than you might think.
Yeah. That's cool. Well, you got to connect me with some of these people because I got to talk about more professions. But I'd like to close off all my podcast episodes with the best and the worst career advice. And the entire purpose is you guys are seasoned professionals, right? Been in the industry for a while. What can some young kid take from this? So I'd like to start off. Who would like to go first?
What can some young kid take from this whole thing?
The best career advice.
And worst.
You got quotes.
I do. I do. Remember this one quote, and I'll say it again. It's better to be valuable and not experienced than experienced and not valuable. Got to keep that in mind. And that's hands down, period, one of the best career advices. And also make sure you stay honest and trustworthy. And then when you do come into this field, just always be willing to learn. That's my best career advice, is just always be willing to learn. And here's another career advice is be proud to be a nerd. That's me. Like, I'm a nerd and I have no problem with admitting it. So that's another career advice. Like, I think everybody appreciates a well-educated person.
Yeah.
So don't be afraid to get educated. And when it comes to the worst, I don't know. The only thing I can really say is just don't lose focus at all. Like when you do come to this school, or you do want to be an aircraft mechanic, just don't lose focus. Just stay focused, stay honest, stay trustworthy, stay a team player. Don't lose that. Don't get attitudes when you come in. When somebody asks you to do something, limit that. And I'm trying to tell you, you'll be fine. You're making this career easily. I mean, I know we don't want to say the word guarantee, but if you come into this field as an aircraft mechanic and you work hard and you're willing to travel, you're willing to do everything else, you're going to have really close to a guaranteed future. Sorry.
Yeah.
But the truth is the truth. You come in, you work hard, you and your family.
You're going to look at that plane and be like, easy.
Easy, man. Light work. Slight work. But yeah, what about you, though?
You know, I think that there is a stream of bad career advice that folks see all the time. I don't do a whole lot of social media, but I'm pretty active in LinkedIn. And almost daily, I'll see a thread of career advice that goes something like this. They should give it to you. Demand your worth. Don't let anyone say no to you. It should come easy to you. You should be able to work at home. You should be able to work on your own terms. You should have your boss's job right now. There seems to be a thread of career advice these days, and I'm sorry if I sound like an old man here, but there seems to be this thread of career advice that says, you're fine, it's the rest of the world that's screwed up. And I just don't know that that's the best career advice.
Right.
I would say to any young person, you have attributes that you should hold on to. Your core values are extremely important. Don't infract upon what's important to you, but understand that hard work is what is most likely to get you forward as you move forward. And so when I see something that tries to communicate, nothing's wrong with you, it's the rest of the world that needs to change and adapt to you, I say, I would stand clear of that advice, because professional growth, change is one of the most important things to develop in a career. So I tell my students, plan for this educational experience to change you. If you haven't changed through this process, then we got something wrong. We intend for people to grow.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
That was the worst career advice.
That was the worst.
What's the best career advice?
Best career advice, and I'm sorry if this seems so super simple and saccharine sweet. Best career advice, treat other people like you want to be treated. I use that. I'm the president of this organization.
Yes, sir.
And I want to treat this man, one of my 300 and some instructors, just like I want to be treated. I want every one of my 5,800 students, I want to treat them just like I want to be treated. Because if we can treat each other with mutual respect, no matter where we are on the rung, then we're likely to create a working environment that is, heaven on earth, right? The kind of place we want it to be if we treat each other like we want to be treated ourselves.
Well, I mean, I could tell right when I called you. So for the audience, I had a call with Joel last week. And, there's people in this world that take themselves very seriously. And then there's people who don't. And despite being the president of a very successful institution, I didn't get those vibes. So I can say that you actually live by that advice, which is awesome, right?
Yeah.
Because a lot of preachers, not practicers.
Yeah.
And
he's very humble to be in the position that he's in. He's a very humble man. It's my man right there, man. It's a good guy.
This is my man right here.
Well, awesome, guys. It has been a pleasure. I cannot wait till the podcast is big enough that people know.
Oh,
about
man, we're going to be sending this
aviation
everywhere, man. Like it's going everywhere.
That's awesome. Well, again, it was a pleasure. And hope you guys had a good time as well.
Absolutely.
And,
It was an honor to be here, man. I'm
Absolutely.
pretty sure I am very impressed with everything you're doing here.
Thank you. Appreciate
that's
it.
why we drove up here. We have a lot of respect for you and your podcast. And by the way, shout out to everybody else who's been here as well.
Excellent.
Like I've watched a couple of your podcasts already, even learned some things from nurses from that PGA tour. PGA coach.
Yeah.
Golf coach, yeah.
Yeah, could
Man.
you review how can I become a PGA golf
man.
coach? I'd love to know that.
I
It's not
watched
easy.
the one like,
Yeah.
like I watched a couple of yours, and I know I'm very, very impressed with what you're doing here.
I
So just
appreciate
keep it up for us, man, because we think you're awesome. Shout out to you.
Yeah,
And I
thank
think
you,
you
thank
deserve your flowers.
Definitely echo that. You are clearly to have a passion to expose a myriad of careers, all the careers, to the young and not so young people of the country is just to say, I care about the development of this workforce and the development and the opportunity for folks, and so thank you for making that opportunity.
Of course. So while we're talking on that, we were discussing this earlier. One of the major reasons why I started this podcast was, so throughout my journey, there were so many different careers that popped up that I had no idea about. And they were nowhere near as difficult as becoming a lawyer.
Yeah.
Right. And and don't get me wrong, I'm very happy with my profession right now. Right. But the beginning wasn't easy. It is not easy to be a successful attorney.
Yeah.
So, but along the way, I was like, oh my God, this is a much easier option. Right. And I did not need to incur $200,000 in debt.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And so many other things. So I started this because, like, I'm interviewing you guys. There's going to be a whole set of folks that are going to look at this episode and be like, wow, never knew about this. And they will at least try to explore it. Right.
2 years, 50 grand, make 70 in my first year. That sounds pretty good.
Exactly.
Yeah. Yep.
Keep
Right.
that party
And
going.
so that's the hope. And thank you very much for coming here. And can't wait to post the episode.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
Thank you, sir.
Well, that's it for this episode of the My Career Shop podcast. Thank you for tuning in, and I hope you have a better idea of how to become an aviation technician and what to expect once you actually become one. Details about this episode and the career of an aviation technician are on the My Career Shop website, links to which are either in the description below or show notes based on where you are watching or listening from. If you haven't already, please hit the subscribe button, leave a review, and comment on what professions you want me to invite next and what other information you would be interested in learning. See you soon.